Hi, I'm Cornell Smith. I'm the author of the best-selling book, Trapped by Law: Stop Paying Child Support for Paternity Fraud. Thank you, Paul Elam and everyone else, Mr. Buchanan and others. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the International Conference for Men's Issues 2020. And I'm going to share some thoughts and some information from the perspective of women's equality denied by supporting paternity fraud. Women's equality is denied by supporting paternity fraud. Did you know that there are 3 stages of truth? According to Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher, all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. Paternity fraud is an example of the 3 stages of truth. More than 20 years ago, when I found myself as a paternity fraud victim, after discovering an 11-year-old child by 2 DNA tests is not related to me, I demanded that I be set free and removed from a pay-or-go-to-jail situation. And I felt that the right thing to do, since we believe in truth, is that the truth should release me from a deceptive trap that I would have never been in had the truth been told in the beginning. And therein lies the problem where sadly, many women and girls continue to be denied equality by supporting paternity fraud. Wouldn't be fair to go further without telling you what is paternity fraud. And paternity fraud is a lie by omission. It's a lie by omission, by omitting material facts. And the material facts are there is more than one man or boy, in the case of accusations of paternity, that could be the child's father. And that information is knowingly and willingly withheld from the guy who is often the one they want it to be. And how does this deny women equal rights? As many of us gentlemen have heard over the past 20 to 50 years, women have said they're being oppressed and denied equal rights. But I believe there are 3 parts to that triangle of equality. Equal rights also come with equal accountability and equal responsibility. Equal rights, equal accountability, equal responsibility. And if you don't have all 3, then women are being denied equal rights. And how does this tie into paternity? In a civilized society, we're all expected to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And regrettably, sometimes people make mistakes. Some people tell lies. And then when it's discovered, the honorable and the correct thing to do is to correct the mistake, but not to continue to perpetuate the situation in such a way that you become profitable off of the mistake, which is what paternity fraud does, where men and boys are deceived accidentally or intentionally into paying child support or maintenance for a child that is not theirs, that they had no hand in creating and helping to bring into this world. And part of how this perpetuation of paternity fraud, because I call it a fraud, is that it is allowing for incorrect information to remain on the child's birth certificate. That's not right. Incorrect family medical history. If the man or boy is not related to the child, then his medical history is totally irrelevant to that child and should not be used for any life-altering, life-endangering decisions, especially for organ, tissue, or blood donations. It causes a delayed knowledge of the paternal family for the guy or accused and the child. And then 4, it delays the knowledge of the existence of paternal siblings. This child might have brothers or sisters, and God forbid one day they grow up and end up dating having a relationship with and have children with their sibling. I've seen it happen for years over many forms of DNA testing, and DNA testing revealed a man and a woman were actually sister and brother. So there's a maturing lesson, though, also. There's a maturing lesson that is learned from telling the truth, accepting responsibility, and becoming accountable for one's own actions. And how does it tie back again to women being denied equal rights by supporting paternity fraud? Well, when women are not held to the standard to correct a mistake or the intentional falsehood of naming the wrong man or boy as the father of a child, then she's being denied the opportunity to become equally accountable and become equally responsible. And that's not fair to her. I'm Carnell Smith, the paternity coach, also known as the author of Trapped by Law, Stop Paying Child Support for Paternity Fraud. I don't think it's fair to make Cupcake and Karen, continue taking money from the man they've misidentified, misattributed, or worse, fugabooed, tricked, deceived, hustled, swindled, lied to about the paternity of her child. And often this is done using some gamesmanship on words and the definition of words. See, when this happened to me, I thought when I heard, but you're the father, I was only one definition in my mind, and that would be the biological father, the guy who actually contributed the sperm that caused the pregnancy. Gee, what was wrong with me? What could I have possibly been thinking that the child's mother would tell the truth and not knowingly and willingly hide the existence of at least one other person that could be the child's father? There are reasons that women and girls actually commit paternity fraud. They hate me for saying it. They don't like me to call it fraud. They like to say it was a paternity misattribution or misattributed paternity or accidental selection of the wrong guy. Yeah, right, Cupcake. I got a bridge I'd like to sell you if you believe that. But some of the reasons that I've heard over the past couple of decades is she's in love with the guy that she selected as the father, so it has to be him. Gee, her feelings don't always line up with the facts. Number two, the duped guy, the guy she has pulled the wool over his eyes, he makes more money than the actual biological father. So by process of elimination and selection, he who has the greatest income, it is him. That's not right either. Number three, she believes in her heart that the guy she picked after conception, post-conception paternity selection, there's such a thing, and Cupcake is a master of selecting this technique. Picking the father after conceiving because she believed that guy will be a better father. And the last one, you hear this one? Protecting her own interests using the child as an alibi. What? Yes. Cupcake will even go so far as to say, but I had to look out for me, and if it was either con him or trick him, or I was going to have to take care of the kid by myself. And look, I have to get my nails done. I still have to pay for my hair and all of these things. But Cupcake, by you being allowed to perpetuate a scam, a hustle, a swindle on deceiving a man or boy to get child support and child maintenance, you are being denied equal rights because you're not learning your lesson on how to be responsible for your own actions. And feminists everywhere and women advocate groups everywhere should be saying, you're right. Carnell Smith, you're right. We're going to join the effort to help women become equally responsible, equally accountable, and then they would have full equal rights. Because I know that's not going to happen, Carnell Smith being the radical that I am, I'm going to say, men and boys, you can trust Cupcake. Yeah, you could. I don't recommend it. No, don't do it. Don't do it. If she tells you, but he looks like you, don't believe it. Don't accept it. If you do that, you might become one of those men and boys who will be trapped by law. Always. My position is always get a legal DNA test when anyone even claims or you think you might be the father of a child, and confirm the facts, and never rely on Cupcake's word or her feelings as your method of determining paternity. And number two, you need to get a sworn answer from her. Am I the biological father? Yes, no, and why do you believe that I am the biological father? And get those answers sworn under oath. And if you were going to provide any monies for the care and maintenance and upkeep of the child, you place those monies in a separate trust account. You do not put that money in Cupcake's hands, and you let her know. Cupcake, when we get those test results, and those test results come back and confirm that I'm the guy that caused your pregnancy, then the funds will be released and be able to help support the child as long as this is my child. My solution, just as radical as ever, is to just simply do DNA testing at birth. Yet, feminist groups and women's groups all around the world have opposed me. And in France, they've even gone so far as to say it's illegal. Yes, it's illegal for the guy to get a paternity test without the mother's permission. Yes, you see a befuddled look on my face. If she's the person who is committing the lie of omission by knowingly and willingly hiding information from the guy, either she wants it to be, and let's just be honest here. If she's having an affair on her husband, she's not really in the mood to reveal to her husband that she has extracurricular friends. You know what I'm saying? Extracurricular friends. And now in France, they're going to pass a law that says if he gets a paternity test without her, he is breaking the law, subject to jail and penalties, etc. Never mind that the DNA test may reveal that she has actually had multiple affairs while in a relationship with her husband. A husband who, dare I say, might have wanted to believe in these things called fidelity, honesty, truth. But as crafty as Cupcake is, she thinks that telling the truth is optional as long as she has her fingers crossed behind her back, or some other illogical, insane, crazy thing like that. My recommendation, fellas, is you should do what I did. Participate in the legislative reform process. Whether the feminists and the women's groups help you or not, there are plenty of honest women who will, like your mom, your sister, your auntie, your grandmother, who would rather see you truthfully support children that are yours after confirming they are yours, rather than you go to jail for non-payment or refusal to pay. How dare you, you scoundrel, not hand over your wages and work for free for 18 to 21 years. Because a child should be supported. We agree. And it should be supported. The child should be supported by the people who brought the child into this world. Unless the man is a guy who knowingly and willingly adopted a child. Because then he can't be a paternity fraud victim. Number two, a guy who knowingly and willingly participated with his wife in assisted pregnancy, like in vitro fertilization. Surrogacy, using another man's sperm because he is infertile. Gee, you mean actually allow men to have a informed consent in the process, and boys actually know the facts beforehand? Yes, that would be ideal, because we cannot rely upon the look-alike test, and we cannot rely on Cupcake's word. These are two things. We cannot trust Cupcake to be truthful 100% of the time, She thinks that's being restrictive, and she thinks that's not fair, that you're trying to box her in. And I would dare say, yeah, I would be trying to box you in, Cupcake, because I want you to be so enamored with equal rights and equal responsibility and equal accountability that you have no choice but to take the truth, and we're going to get the test because we're not going to rely on your word. So this means we need to have statutory law that provides for DNA testing at birth or at the first court hearing or child support hearing. Anytime someone wants to get money using the child as the alibi, the means and the method to get paid. And believe it or not, it has, because so many child support payments have components of extra money that doesn't go really for the benefit of the child. It is over and above the economic cost of raising the child based on the person's income level, not based on what Cupcake says she wants, the amount of money that Cupcake says she demands or that she says she deserves. Cupcake, here's a tip for you. Get skills and get educated and get yourself a job instead of using a baby to run a fraud and perpetrate a scam on men and boys. That's only fair. Come on, Cupcake. You can't have anything against the truth. I mean, after all, we only want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And Cupcake, I dare say, I believe you are capable of telling the truth. However, since there are many incentives that you might not tell the truth, and you might rely on a lower standard, like the look-alike test, because the baby has his eyes, has his nose, has his smile. You will use that standard as a means to convince a man or boy that that baby is his, and therefore he will fall for the first trap. The first trap is men and boys who sign a paternity confession. Yes, a paternity confession. Sometimes they call it another name. Paternity opportunity program. A paternity acknowledgement document. The short of it is, gentlemen, men and boys, you're being asked to sign a confession admitting that you did something without proof that you did it, and then say that it's your fault you signed that document as sufficient reason if you find out later that you're not the father. It's your fault because you signed the confession. So my recommendation, don't do it. Never, ever do it. Number 2, incorrect default paternity judgments. Yes, there are courts across the land that once Cupcake says, that's my child's father, there is a presumption of guilt. You heard me correctly. A presumption of guilt. That means she said you did it. She signed documents swearing that she said you did it. And dadgummit, you did it, and it's on you to prove otherwise. And unfortunately, many men and boys don't make it to that first court hearing because guess what? Sometimes they don't even know about the hearing. Yes, if the lawsuit information was served to your former address where you no longer live or you've not been there in the last 8 years, you might not have your mail forwarded to where your current address is. Or what if you live with your parents and now you have your own place because you moved out and you live in your own condominium or home? But you wouldn't have mail forwarded to you beyond some reasonable amount of time, 3 months, 6 months, because you would have informed all of the relevant parties that you know what your new address is. But because men and boys don't make it to that first hearing, like men who are actively deployed out of country in military service, someone can put your name down like Cupcake. She can put your name down and say you're the father, and next thing you know, you're in a lawsuit trying to fight an establishment to set child support, an establishment to set paternity against you based on her word alone. And by the way, Cupcake is not required to submit proof. The standard is not, that maybe that's too much work and effort, but they also don't require Cupcake to name all of the possible fathers based on the window of conception. Number 3, the marital presumption of paternity, or as I like to say it, the marital assumption of paternity, where any children that you have while you're married to Cupcake are automatically assumed to be yours. As if Cupcake will tell the truth 100% of the time while she's your wife. Oh yeah, remember what I said earlier? As long as she's got her fingers crossed, she's not going to tell you that at her bachelorette party on your wedding, before your wedding, she had some fun with those male strippers, or how about this, with a family member of yours. And there's a reason that that child looks like you, because you and your cousin look alike, your brother look alike. Oh my gosh, you and the best man, y'all even look alike. But DNA testing reveals so often that married men are victims of paternity fraud and are trapped by law, because the Lord Mansfield doctrine from old England says that any children were automatically assumed to be the husband's children. However, there were some exemptions under the Lord Mansfield doctrine, like the woman and the child belong to the man. If they want to roll the clock back, you sure, ladies, you want to roll the clock back and just say we don't have to, we're going to take the woman's word because she's married, any children are automatically her husband's? I say no. Test them all. Number three. What about mistaken paternity? Mistaken identity. Mistaken identity. Yes, mistaken identity. You can be actually drawn into a paternity situation in a lawsuit based on them getting the wrong guy. Yes, it's not uncommon that there might be another guy, man or boy, has your same name, and sometimes you get identified as the party for a lawsuit that you had nothing to do with, and maybe you dismiss the thing as, hey, I don't know this lady, and you don't go to that hearing. Gentlemen, this is a mistake. You must defend yourself anytime there's someone pursuing you for money, and you cannot treat this lightly. You must treat this as if your money and your life is dependent upon it, because it may very well be. So let me recap those things. So 1, paternity confession. Don't admit to paternity without proof. Number 2, incorrect default paternity judgments. Hey, if there's some hearing that made a decision, a judge or a hearing officer has decided that you're the father of a child, as soon as you find out about this, you must fight this and get legal help, because you can't trust dealing with the agency that has established this order against you. They are not there to help you. Number 3, the marital presumption of paternity. Women say that her husband is the father, and people automatically believe the husband is the father. They even believe this when those people are separated by thousands of miles, when he had no access to her, could not have possibly touched her. What is he going to do? Send a sample through the mail by FedEx? Dude, that'd be a special package, right? Really. Unfortunately, there's one more, and that mistaken identity. Because this happens, this leaves men and boys at risk to become trapped by law. And that's not right. That's not fair. And women who truly support equality would say, no one else should be accountable for my actions. I'm a big girl. I'm big enough to have those intimate partners and intimate relationships. I'm big enough to tell the truth. And if necessary, the law should be modified to help me tell the truth. For example, in Australia, did you know that paternity fraud is not rare? In Australia, there's actually the case of a good friend of mine who I met remotely and actually helped with his appeal case, Mr. Liam McGill. He was married. He thought he had 3 children with his wife. DNA testing reveals his wife had 2 children with a boyfriend. You heard me correctly. So his wife had 2 other children with another man while she was married to him. He sued her, and originally he was awarded $70,000 in Australian currency for damages and economic loss. He contended that she committed fraud because with the intent to deceive, because she allowed for false, inaccurate information to be placed on the children's birth documents. And the High Court in Australia overturned his judgment and did not let him get that money. How do you mean not intent to deceive? She knowingly and willingly hid the existence of her extramarital affair, and she knew she was having unprotected relations with the children's father, but yet somehow she was not responsible to inform him. this is proof, in my opinion, that the marital presumption, the marital assumption of paternity doesn't work very well. And what about South Korea? In South Korea, there's a case, a gentleman, he found out, and you can find all of these examples, by the way, on using the terms paternity fraud on the wiki page. Look up paternity fraud, 2 words, paternity fraud, on the wiki page, and you'll see these examples of men all across the world. Like in South Korea, a gentleman sues and successfully wins over almost $43,000 against his ex-wife because genetic testing revealed that he was not the father of her child. And originally she tried to claim she had been raped. He was ready to go to the police and pursue a police report and help get that scoundrel who had attacked his wife arrested. And then she changed her story. Turns out she knew the guy. She had had long relations with the guy, so she wouldn't file a police report. And ultimately, her whole situation, hiding the truth, blew up because that man got a DNA test. Are you hearing me, married men? Don't think. Listen, I'm Carnell Smith, and I have a YouTube channel. You'll see most of the men on my channel are married men. Yes. This is sad, and I gotta say it, but in this day and age, just because Cupcake's married, Cupcake seems to take marital vows, fidelity, honesty, and integrity as optional terms that she is not required to live up to. But yet, when men do these things, and men actually have marital affairs and have children outside of their marriage, they don't get to use their marital status as a shield to be denied responsibility and accountability for their actions. Let me give you an example. Cupcake, did you know you cheated on your husband? Well, I don't call it cheating. But you knew you had intimate relations with the guy. Well, yeah. When did you tell your husband? Well, that was none of my husband's business. Kind of gives you an idea of how she treats it. But she says, my husband is responsible, Your Honor, because the law says any children that I have while I'm married to my husband are automatically my husband's children. So, Your Honor, my husband is responsible for paying me for a no-fault divorce, alimony. I want the house. I want him to pay my attorney's fees. And I want the car, Your Honor. And I want the dog, his best friend, too. Wow. Yes, fellas, even though I'm being somewhat comical, using humorous, is happening to married men, and it's not rare. Unfortunately, there's countries like France who says if you get a DNA test without her permission, you're breaking the law. So it seems to me the laws in some countries are being changed to be a shield to protect women from their equal rights by denying them equal responsibility, equal accountability, so they can get away under a cloak of deception and get away with profiting by lies of omission. This is not just. This is not fair. And believe it or not, there are some judges who've actually called this situation out rightly. Let me quote just a couple of very high court decisions. United States Supreme Court, 1987, Rivera versus Minnick. In the field of contested paternity, the truth is so often obscured because social pressures create a conspiracy of silence, or worse, induce deliberate falsity. Yep, lies on purpose. The person alleged to be the father has a legitimate interest in not being declared the father of a child he had no hand in bringing into the world. It is important to him that he not be required to provide support or financial assistance to someone who is not his child. Let's redirect that to Cupcake, who uses the child to get paid. United States Supreme Court, Little versus Streeter, 1981. The value of blood tests as a wholesome aid in the quest for truth in the administration of justice in these matters cannot be gainsaid in this day. It is a reliable indicator of truth, and their reliability has been fully established. Obviously, both the child and the defendant in a paternity action have a compelling interest in the truth. That's correct, Your Honor. I agree with both of these judges. And look, in my own state of Georgia in the United States, where I actually won my case after getting the law changed based on finding what this judge said, I took up the path, I took up the mission with the help of many, many other people to get the law changed, thanks to the help of my state representative, Representative Stanley Watson in the United States, who also went on to help me with getting Florida changed with Representative Curtis Richardson, Senator Al Lawson, and others, that we got the laws changed based on me finding out what this appellate court judge said. He said, while it is the policy of this state to require fathers to support their minor children, it is not the policy to extort such support from persons who are not in fact the fathers. The law should not punish a purported father for failing to insist on a paternity test when he has no reason to believe that he's not the father. You know, like a guy who is trusting the child's mother, who believes the child's mother, who believes what the child's mother said, as if she would tell the truth. How dare we punish him for believing in her? If we're going to say that's a crime, then let's look at the next part of what this judge said. He said a contrary rule would invite suspicion and distrust and essentially require all, that's right, require all purported fathers upon divorce or separation to accuse their spouses or partners of infidelity by demanding proof of paternity. In addition to fostering animosity between the parents, a rule encouraging fathers to contest paternity could also have a negative impact on the father-child relationship. Well, if it's not his child, I say he needs to know this. And since we can't rely on Cupcake to tell him the truth 100% of the time in the beginning, it is my contention, men, boys, always get the paternity test as soon as possible. And to give you an idea how well this can work and should be done, I had a client who heard what I said and recommended. I think he heard me on radio or television. And he set up his DNA testing so that on the day that he checked out of the hospital with the child and the child's mother and the newborn baby, he came by my office. He got his DNA test samples collected from him, the mother, the child. I photographed, fingerprinted everybody, so I saw their identification. I signed as a witness and completed full chain of custody documentation. I shipped off the samples to the laboratory, and in less than a week, the truth came back. Somebody did cause that pregnancy of that newborn baby, but it was not my client, and DNA testing results came back at 0.0%. That man got the truth in the first week of the baby's birth. How about that? Fellas, here's my position. Trust but verify. You can tell me you trust your wife, you trust your girlfriend, you trust your boo, your baby. She'd never lie to you. Oh, yes, she might. Because if it's losing you and losing the money, she might lie to keep you. And there was a poll and a survey done some years back, and I think about 50% of the women said if they had an affair or a relationship where they got pregnant outside of the guy they were in a relationship with, they would lie to him. Come on, ladies. How is that supporting your quest for equal rights? Come on, feminists and women organizations. You should support legislation that requires the truth. And then this last thing right here, the appellate judge says, not only has the putative father been cuckolded, the law adds insult to injury to insult by requiring him to pay child support. And I'm going to add, after he's been tricked. Why require him after he's established that he's not the biological father? So he's been lied to. Cupcake, you lied. She's like, oh, my bad. But he didn't figure it out in time, so I should still get to keep the money. And Judge, Your Honor, you should enforce that order and make this his fault because he didn't find out in time. Wow, that doesn't sound right at all. And this judge says once paternity is scientifically established as non-paternity. So once non-paternity is scientifically established, courts cannot ignore such facts by relying on policies developed when no such proof was possible. Translation: the court should not ignore the results of the DNA test when years and tens and dozens of years ago that genetic test wasn't available. They had blood type testing. Maybe you could be excluded, but it didn't always accurately identify the right guy. But now we have DNA fingerprinting, where outside of identical twins, triplets, where the men are a result of being conceived from the same fertilized egg, we can identify and narrow it down to one guy. And no, you can't rely on Cupcake to always accurately tell you which guy that was. But the court says this. It says to create fiction in this matter does not make the male the biological father of the child. Fiction. Wow. Only thing missing from that is once upon a time in a far, far land, Cupcake told the truth 100% of the time. Yeah, there's your fiction. All right. It says it doesn't make him the father. It makes him a victim of the law. And while courts preach their false policy, they lose the respect of any citizen with common sense. The legislature should address this issue. And when I saw that, and I met the guys whose cases these were, I took up the mantle to change the law, finding a gentleman whose name was Dennis Karen in Ohio, who was a paternity fraud victim who went to jail after his Cupcake told him if he didn't marry her, she would abort the baby. So he married her. And a few years later, he found out he was not the father. Wow, what a huge slap in the face and a kick in the guts. Wow, not your child. She threatened to harm the child if you didn't marry her, and you didn't find out it was all a hustle, a scam. And even these things even happen in other cases where I saw a federal case. A woman filed for Social Security claiming the child was a dependent of the man who died, and DNA testing revealed the kid was not that man's kid. So she got convicted for committing fraud against a government agency. She was sentenced to 15 months of imprisonment, 36 months of supervised release, and ordered to pay restitution in the amount of nearly $33,000. Now that is equal accountability. That is equal responsibility. I sure wish that we had laws worldwide where men and boys could rely upon and count on 100% of the mothers to tell them the truth. But since that doesn't happen, men, you got to warn the other fellas. You got to warn the other guys and people with sons. When your teenage son gets accused of a pregnancy, yeah, you can say you might be the grandparents, but always verify. I'm Carnell Smith. I'm the author of Trapped by Law, Stop Paying Child Support for Paternity Fraud. You can reach me on social media. I'm available on the World Wide Web at carnellsmith.com, and on Facebook. You can find me at Paternity Coach, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, Paternity Coach. Thank you. Enjoy, share this message, and we won't have any more men and boys trapped by law if you'll share this message. Thank you.